Welcome to Reculture. My name is CJ Cassiata. This is a podcast about better messages. Messages that don't just tell us what to react to, but help us understand where we are in this moment. Messages that don't just pull us in or grab our attention, but afterwards point us somewhere. Because whether we're navigating a brand or a team or a family or even just the world right now, which is a lot, we are all living inside of stories. Some of them we've chosen and some of them we haven't. And the real question is, how do we navigate the story that we're becoming? We live in Columbus, Ohio, so we've got one of the best zoos in the whole country. And sometimes the zoo will even bring animals to our local library. And recently they brought in a sloth. And my son is super into animals, so obviously we had to go. And I'm standing there holding my coffee and I'm checking my phone and I'm honestly half paying attention when the trainer starts explaining something that actually makes me look up. It turns out sloths contain entire ecosystems on their body. So because they move so slowly, moss grows on their fur, and that moss attracts moths. You might even call them sloth moths. So let me see if I get this right. The sloth moths lay eggs, and when the moth dies, they fertilize the moss. And the moss, in turn, protects the sloth, and in turn, the sloth sustains this whole sloth moth life cycle. You understand? Okay, well, it doesn't really matter. Here's my point. I am listening to this whole thing, and I've put my phone down, and I realize I've gotten sloths completely wrong my entire life. I mean, we literally named a deadly sin after them. Sloth. Laziness, uselessness, slowness. This whole time, the sloth was doing something incredibly important that only works because it moves slowly. So I called the sloths and I said, guys, you need better storytelling. I'm not sure you're aware, but your public image is just way off. Maybe start a podcast or something. I don't know, some sort of PR move. But I don't know. As my son was recapping this whole thing to me on the way home, like he's David Attenborough holding a juice box, I'm wondering, how many things in our lives have we misunderstood like this? How many stories have we inherited about the way the world works that made perfect sense once, but don't quite fit anymore? We inherit stories all the time. The older I get, the more I realize the stories I loved most as a kid weren't just entertainment. They were teaching me how the world works and who I was inside it. Stories is actually too small a word for what they were. They were something bigger. They were myths. Anything could be a story. A sitcom is a story. A news article is a story. A myth is different. A myth is a story that forms us, that teaches us how the world works and who we are in it. And often we don't realize that that's happening while it's happening. We just think we love the story. Later you realize the story's been shaping you the entire time. I learned collaboration from the Muppets. I learned about friendship from The Lord of the Rings, about adventure from Calvin and Hobbes, about sincerity and failure from Charlie Brown. I learned that pizza has to be a healthy food because the Ninja Turtles were all super muscly and jacked. I think Mr. Rogers taught me about who God was. Those myths all formed me. And looking back, they were pretty easy to identify. They had puppets, they had cartoons. They literally had theme songs. They were obvious. But just because we grow up, it doesn't mean that we stop collecting myths. They just don't take the shape of stories. They look like assumptions. They look like rules. They look like the way life works. And if you carry responsibility for anybody, at work, at home, anywhere, you know how powerful those unspoken stories can be. You've watched them shape others, and you've watched them shape yourself. And that's where things get a little bit interesting, I think, because I think many of us, myself included, find ourselves still living inside stories like the sloth that made perfect sense once, but don't feel like they fit anymore. I'll give you an example that stood out to me a while ago. I put this in the book, Get Weird. I go to watch Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, with my daughter for the first time. You ever notice how Rudolph, that story hits a little bit differently as an adult? As a kid, it's a sweet underdog story, right? Poor Rudolph, he's different, he's left out, he's teased, and then one foggy Christmas Eve, boom, suddenly he is useful. And now everybody loves him. And as a kid, you're like, yay, justice, acceptance. And as an adult, you're like, hang on a minute. Just wait a second. He's only welcome once he's useful. That's the myth. Be different quietly, be rejected politely, and hope one day for a blizzard so your difference can become profitable all of a sudden. That story worked for me for a long time until it didn't, until it started to feel like tension when I was living inside it. And I think a lot of stories are like this. Stories like, if I keep everybody happy, I'll be okay. Or if I just don't rock the boat, life will be simpler. Those aren't bad stories. They're survival stories. But sometimes we come to the miraculous conclusion that we've outgrown a myth. And the challenge happens when we don't notice when a story stops fitting. Like, we just keep living inside it. This happens in companies and teams all the time. And when that happens, sometimes the work isn't to create a new strategy. It's to repair the myth people are already living inside. I've been with leadership teams where nothing was like technically wrong, but something still felt a little off. Like, people were moving in different directions. Not because their strategy was off, because the story underneath it no longer fit. They were still trying to live inside a story the company had outgrown. And before we could even talk about a new message, we had to repair the myth underneath. And that's the strange thing about myths. Like, they don't ask for your permission necessarily. You don't choose them. You just live inside them. And if you never stop to notice, you can spend years living inside a story that no longer fits you. I think about that scene in The Lion King, which is another story that formed me as a kid. Simba, he's run away, right? He's built an entire life around a new story, Hakuna Matata. No worries, no responsibilities, no past, no future. It's a pretty great story if you ask me, honestly. We all need some Hakuna Matata sometimes, especially nowadays. But it's also not who he is really deep down. And the turning point of that whole movie is not the battle scene at the end with Scar. It's a voice. It's his dad's voice in the cloud saying, remember who you are. Father Greg Boyle, he's the founder of Homeboy Industries. It's the world's largest rehabilitation and reentry program for gang members. And the amount of stories that guy has, where the one thing these guys want, like the one thing these gang members want, the one thing that changes them, it's just somebody to call dad, like just somebody where they can hear a guy say, I'm proud of you. I'm here for you. Father Greg calls it a no matter what kind of love. That's myth repair. It's not shaming. It's not correcting. It's not forcing. It's just reminding. The older I get, I realize I want to be that voice for my own kids. Like, not telling them what to do necessarily, just helping them remember who they are. Because we forget who we are sometimes. So do teams, so do companies. And the reason that kind of reminder works, a voice that calls you back to who you really are, is because some myths are strong enough to survive when we drift. They don't break when we waver. They might morph a little, but they never stop pointing us back to something we never stop needing. And once you see this, once you notice this, it's everywhere. It's in the Muppets. It's in Star Wars. It's in religions that are thousands of years old. Even in democracy itself, thankfully. Why? Not because those things are trendy necessarily, but not because they're nostalgic, but because they are able to change shape without losing their center. That's why they can survive cultural swings. That's why they can survive technological shifts. The cultures that last aren't necessarily the ones with the best strategy. They're the ones whose myths outlast the moment. So I want my son, the animal expert, to close us out.
The cool thing about the sloth is nothing about him needed to change. The ecosystem was always there. The only thing that needed to change was the myth that we believed in. Once that changes, you won't just see the sloth differently, you'll see everything differently.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to Reculture. To learn more about our sense-making studio and the work we do, go to reculture.tv. You can also follow me, CJ, on Instagram @the CJ account.